Welcome everyone to another video. What you see in front of you here is a cage nut. These have been around since the 1950s, believe it or not, for mounting equipment into square holed racks of various shapes, sizes, widths and depths, and have been the staple for anyone who's been rack mounting kit since they probably started nowadays. Until recently, when Rackstuds came along. These have been a godsend to a certain degree. These have made mounting equipment in racks so much simpler and easier, and they are quite universally part of our kit now. So generally we will mount equipment on a rack stud in a rack instead of putting in cage nuts, unless we absolutely have to, purely and simply because these make it so much easier. But what's happened is rack studs have gone away and come up with a slightly different version of this, which is a bit better. This is the Series 2 Duo, which, instead of being a single stud per hole, is one unit for every 2 holes that you require. So if you're mounting 1 new appliances, you only have to use 1 for each unit. Now, again, these have become part of our day-to-day networking usage. So we use a fair few of these to mount 1U things into racks. So as well as doing a comparison between the original rack stud and the Rackstuds Duo, something else has come my way. Put them out the way. Put them out the way. Which is the /dev/mount from Patchbox. Now, this is their little trial box because obviously you have to try things before you know whether you like them. So let's have a look at the difference between these and see what we get. So this is my first look at a dev/mount, or a dev mount, or whatever they want to actually call it. But the concept is pretty similar. You have, instead of a cage with a bolt, you end up with a stud with a nut, a large nut for securing it. And the idea is that, in theory, being made out of metal should make it a bit stronger and a bit more sturdy. But we'll see about that. So let's just have a quick look at these because I've not seen them before. So we might as well share this experience together. So first impressions, not too bad. They're obviously considerably heavier than a rack stud. Similar dimensions. Be interesting to see when we get that into a rack how it clips together and compares to the plastic clip, and see how flexible or not flexible they are when they're actually situated in a thing. Other big concept here is price. These are, for a box of 50, about £30 in the UK. These, for a box of 50, are somewhere in the region of £80 to £90. So there is a considerable price difference between the two, and these are, again, for a box of about, I think they're in about 50. Again, I'll include links, affiliated links down below to this and this. I can't do that for that, however. So these we shall see. What I'm going to do now is transport us up to my rack, which is now currently empty. So a perfect time to do a test with Rackstuds Duo and the dev/mount and see how they perform in an actual rack. And we're up with my rack. So we'll start with the Rackstuds first of all. If you haven't used these before, these are an absolute godsend. Number one, they save your fingers, especially when you're dealing with cage nuts, but also they make generally just racking general network switches, firewalls. I won't say servers because servers usually come with their own racks, but small appliances, things like that, into normal racks very easy. So might as well start at the top, quite literally click it in, like so. Go over to this side and click, and in they go. Next step with the original rack studs is you put the little yellow collar on them to lock them in place, stops them popping out. Same for this side. And there you go. That is one you've done with the original rack studs. Rackstud Duos, which are these ones, on the other hand, even easier. We use number 9, line them up, and click. And quite literally the same on this side, into number 9, push them through, locate, squeeze, and they go through. Just so you can see that from behind, it is a quick squeeze and they pop in and out. Very, I say very easy. Obviously I'm doing this one-handed, so it makes it a bit more awkward. But if you're doing this two-handed without trying to balance the camera, they just click in like so. The dev mounts, on the other hand, not used these yet, so let's find out. So we'll go with number 7. Okay, again, so we'll line them up. Interestingly, now first impressions are, there we go, right, so that's locked in place and that is now held in place. So that's one. Switch over to this side, and again, so in at the angle, and locked in place. So they're locked in, and obviously they're locked in. Now, one of the complaints that has been often voiced with the rack studs, especially on the original rack studs, they do tend to make appliances sit a bit proud and you get a bit of flex in the appliance, whatever you've mounted on here. What we'll do is a comparison between the 2 rack studs and the dev mount in terms of that. And for that, we're going to use 3 mostly identical firewalls. To make this fair, obviously this one at the top here has got a flex module in it, but that doesn't really affect the weight too much. So what we'll do, let's get these mounted in and see how well they sit, flex, and generally are sat with each set of mountings. Okay, 3 firewalls all mounted currently with 1 nut on the bottom stud on each. Just to show, because when you're mounting and racking kit up, sometimes you have to literally slot it in place, thumb screws on, and then walk away. But just to show you actually, as they stand, that's how much flex you get on them. The dev mount and the original rack studs actually have the least flex. The Rackstuds Duo have a lot more flex in them if you've only got the bottom units on. Just an FYI. But as we're here now, let's stick on the top, because this is the big difference between the Duos and the normal rack studs, is that obviously once you've tightened up the top studs, this should secure itself in quite neatly, and obviously there is no flex in that at all. we'll just do the same with the original studs. And throw that around, do that again, just line that up so you don't cross thread it. Now these are quite literally hand tight. Again, very little in the way of flex, and these are not light units. And finally, we will get on the old dev/mount nuts. So they are hand tight as well, and we have no flex. From the side, you can see all three firewalls mounted. They are pretty much as expected. There is a small amount of droop at the tail end. In fact, more pronounced on the Duos than on the originals and on the dev mounts. But again, that's solid in there. That's solid in there. There's actually a bit more flex on that one than the Rackstuds. So let's spin ourselves back round a minute. So that is basically the difference. They all mount perfectly. Until you're getting some severe weight on them, they actually all do a really good job. There is nothing wrong with the dev mounts, nothing wrong with the Rackstuds, nothing wrong with the original Rackstuds. The Rackstud Duos are considerably quicker to mount than the original Rackstuds because there's only one per side. The dev mounts, again, nice and easy to mount, clip in place. The only thing from my personal preference, the actual thumb screws or thumb nuts on the Rackstuds are a lot more comfortable, and you get a lot more purchase on them doing them up by hand than the dev mounts. Being metal, these are very, I suppose there's less grip to them because they're just a smooth nut at the end of the day. The question, however, is these are effectively 3 times the price of these. Are these worth 3 times the price of these? Not really. These are, yes, nice in metal. You could actually get a socket set on them and crank them up. Whereas if you over tighten a rack stud, it will just strip the end of the plastic out, and then you just have to get a pair of pliers and undo them. So for anything that is rugged, you may want to consider a dev/mount, but we probably won't be changing unless there is a specific use case for these. I can rack effectively all 3 of those firewalls for the same cost of one set of those as it stands currently, basically because these are plastic and these are metal. So, and if you're hanging things off that a rack that are going to require or going to overload a set of rack studs versus that, then you probably want something that is supporting the rear of the appliance as well, and not just hanging off the front, because that's a lot of weight that you would have to put on. But there you go. They all work. They're all good. Future me checking back in, just something that I thought of after de-racking all the surfaces. Dismantling. Obviously with a normal rack stud, you just pull off the locking washer, push the side in, out it pops, and you just unclip. And there it goes. Rackstud Duo. Squeeze, pull, done. Dev mount. Now what you've got to do is ping that little clip out. Now the one pain in the ass on original actual racks, well, not on original cage nuts, is that you tear your fingers to pieces getting the damn things out. Guess what? You tear your fingers to pieces getting the damn things out. So again, not the easiest to get out. I'll just try the other side just to make sure I wasn't going mad. Pushing it in, having to bend it out, and yeah. So make of that what you will. Obviously, once you put these in, the idea is they stay in for a long period of time. But these you can just pop out. So if you're putting kit in and out and moving it around a lot, yeah, you're not going to end up with much skin left unless you've got a screwdriver to hand. So anyway, back to me. We're going to stick with rack studs. Dev mount is an option if you require something that's metal, but they all do the job, they all mount, and they all behave in exactly the same way, pretty much. The choice is yours, but our preference is on the Rackstud Duos and the Rackstuds, for now, anyway. Until next time, people, please like, share, subscribe, etc. Comments down below, get in touch, and I'll see you in the next one.